our kids may be watching us in new ways because we're also home together. And the way we approach play and exercise and meals and our work, we may be modeling for them in a new way because they're around to see it. And this might be a good accountability for us to make sure that we're looking for that balance, that we're also making those good choices. And again, you don't need to say anything, but then they can hopefully also see us laugh hard and say, oh, tomorrow I'm going to do it differently.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, thanks so much for being here. For this week's podcast episode, I am bringing you a recording of the webinar I did earlier this week with Sara Kuljis about creating structure, fun, and connection. Many parents are feeling overwhelmed by all that's going on and now the added responsibilities of supervising our kids' schoolwork at home. So I hope this episode just provides some encouragement and reassurance that you're doing fine and that you can just use this time to create a little more fun and connection and not be so hard on yourself that the schedule may not always go as planned. And now here you go, my webinar with Sara Kuljis. So we are going to officially get started with today's webinar on creating structure, fun, and connection. I'm here with Sara Kuljis. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you. It's fun to meet all together and navigate this crazy time with like-minded parents.
Absolutely. And Sara, you and I have done quite a few podcasts. I always call you kind of almost my co-host. If we lived nearer to each other, we'd probably do all of the interviews together. But I think that one of the things that we both find is that by bouncing ideas off of each other, we really help each other learn and grow as parents and camp directors and everything else. So why don't we start with just a little bit, Sara, why don't you just tell a little bit about your background so people know who you are?
Sure. Well, thank you. With my husband, Steve, I'm the executive director and owner of Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp, Emerald Cove Day Camp, and Ecos Institute. Basically, that means we do camps year round as a way to shape children and teach them to learn and grow. We're a faith-based program for a number of our efforts and have been doing this for about a little over 20 years. I'm actually a second-generation camp director. My folks started one of our programs way back when. So it's a treat to carry on that very effective legacy. I'm also a certified Gallup Strengths coach and love shining a spotlight on the gifts and talents that each of us have naturally built in us, and then aiming those gifts and talents at challenges and at growth in the future. And I'm the mother of 3 kids. I've got a high schooler, 2 college kiddos, and again, my husband, Steve. I live in Orange County and also in Bass Lake, California.
Thank you so much for that, Sara. And I'm Audrey Monkey, for those of you who don't know me. And I am also a summer camp director and kind of pivoted to more of this parent education stuff with my podcast and book in recent years. And I've just really enjoyed connecting a lot with both parents at my own camp and at other camps, and also with camp professionals. And before we started the formal recording, I mentioned, but I want to reiterate, we do have quite a few camp professionals maybe joining us today. If you are here as attendees, camp professionals, please give a shout out of what camp you're from and where you're logging in from, because these are definitely camp professionals who are committed to providing great resources and education to their camp families during this time. And I know a lot of camps are already doing some really cool outreaches and helping families during this time. I think as summer camp professionals, we are all about connection and friendship. And this is an opportunity that even though we can't be together face to face, we can still help our families and be a source of a resource for them. So I do encourage all of you. I know a lot of you may be connected with a camp in some way if you're listening, and that's great. And even if you're not, find one to connect with, because I'm telling you right now, this is a great time to connect with a camp community and near you, or maybe a residential camp that's not near you that you know of, and undo that. So awesome to have so many camp professionals with us this morning. And again, we'll go ahead and you guys can let us know what resources and things you're doing, and we'll put those in the follow-up notes that we send out to everybody so that people can see all the things going on. I know yesterday I saw that Ariella from Sanborn Camps in Colorado created a nature bingo card that she shared on their website that you can print out and use. And then she also had blank ones that people can create. So camp people are sharing a lot of amazing resources right now. So I'm really excited to be and honored to be part of this community. Don't you think, Sarah?
Oh, absolutely. Again, we all learn from each other and bounce ideas off each other. And sometimes in the midst of more demanding seasons, we get a little foggy brained, and to remember or to see a new idea for the first time reinvigorates us. We're planning on sharing a favorite recipe from camp in the next couple of weeks, and doing a little video for our campers on how to make that, and just finding ways again to make some days more fun and more meaningful. And I know the whole community is doing that. So good to be a part of the camp community.
That's so awesome. And I was thinking about that too, getting our cook to just videotape herself cooking one of the favorite camp things.
Yeah.
Such a great idea. I love that. All right. Well, so let's get started. So it's interesting that this month of all this stuff happened to fall on, we were working on in the Happy Campers Book Club, Camp Secret number 7, which is Kids Thrive on Structure. So obviously everyone being at home has kind of really messed up our structure, I would say. So Sarah, why don't you just start by just talking about a little bit why structure is just important to our kids and ourselves?
Sure. Well, probably most parents know this. And for those of us who are high structure ourselves, it comes easily. But, some of us are a little more freewheeling. And so structure can be confounding. But it's good just to remember that structure provides the fence around the corral or the frame around the painting that helps kids actually feel more freedom within. Structure provides a sense of stability and trust, and especially younger kids or children perhaps with high anxiety or ADHD, for them, structure is even more important because it's difficult for them to create their own. And just because school is now at home, or my team isn't practicing anymore, or mom and dad are working from home, it doesn't mean that we can't set up a kind of a new structure. It doesn't have to be a rigid one, but if we can put the fence around the corral that's a big enough corral, we can provide our kids an environment in which they can thrive a little better during the weeks ahead. And otherwise, we were joking earlier, it feels like a month of Saturdays. And I love Saturdays, but a month of Saturdays can really get us off our rails. So we're going to talk a little bit about what components of structure look like, but just that sense of order. Additionally, I have found, especially with campers, for example, the more they learn the structure of a session at camp, they become more confident. They also become more independent and autonomous. They know that dinner's coming around this time, so they know to take their shower and get dressed on time for dinner rather than having to be always told. And I think we can really build in a little more confidence in our kids during a time that can feel really anxious for them.
Definitely.
Would you add anything to that?
Well,
Audrey?
yeah, definitely. I think it really does vary though. And I wish I had organized one of the polls before. I do think, as our kids are older, like I'm finding them, and I just have one high schooler and one college age here at home. So they really need to be autonomous over their own schedule.
Yes.
They have some online classes. So I think it's like providing, this is what needs to happen here, or here's a chore that needs to get done and some different things, or here's when we're having dinner. And I think relaxing a little too. I shared earlier, or actually I think I'll share now. I had a nice email from someone with a first grader. And the question was about, she just said already on the first day, the question was this: I am one day into homeschooling my first grader. Some of the day is going well with compliance and the work plan is high in the morning, but I've already found there's a bit of a defiant streak later in the day and an attitude of a teenager by the time he had to set the dinner table. And what are things that we can do to help energize and arrest at certain points? And it just made me realize that I think so many of us, I know that I would be that way when my kids were little. I would be thinking, oh my gosh, I need to make sure that, everything's perfect and school's going well and we're doing all this stuff. But I think we need to recognize this is just an odd time. And, our kids will be fine academically, if we, read to them, we, keep up as much as we can, but do lots of breaks and maybe, not feel that we have to follow. It's not going to be the same as a school structure, I guess, is kind of the thing. It's not going to be the same kind of rigidity of a school or a camp schedule right now.
Exactly. And we need to be very patient with ourselves and patient with our families, our kids. This whole week, or maybe even the second week, are going to feel a little goofy and a little discombobulated. So I agree. It doesn't have to be super rigid, but if we can put a few kind of fence posts in the ground to keep us from tipping over, I think in time, we can really find a way to thrive and maybe even add some new and cool components to our family life.
Yeah, before when we were talking about this webinar, one of the things we were talking about is that the connection piece can kind of be woven in to both the structure and fun that we can plan in for our families. So basically the structure we need to make sure we put in there provides for that connection that our kids really need during this time. One thing I wanted to note about is I don't think this is the time to start some new planner or some new too lofty of goals. There was a really great picture going around of this color-coded schedule that, from 8 to 9 this and 9 to 10 creative this. And I think, I looked at that, even as a parent of older kids, I'm thinking, wow, that would be really hard to follow. And yesterday I saw someone had put something over that saying forget it, this is not working after 2 days. So I think I'm more of what needs to happen and what are some general things. And I think that especially for younger kids, I would suggest that mornings are a better time for learning and doing things. So maybe if kind of mornings are set aside for getting whatever schoolwork needs to be done with some breaks to get outside, have a snack, do something, play a card game, read a book together, whatever. And then the afternoons be more, playtime, outside time, hobby time. Older kids, I think, are going to have to kind of figure this out on their own, depending on when their schoolwork is. But I'm also fine with letting my kids sleep in more if they can, during this time and getting some extra sleep. One thing I did want to talk about, and you and I had talked about this, Sarah, is just our own schedules and how they've been, kind of in upheaval from this. So what are some things, Sarah, that you think are kind of important for parents to be remembering about their own schedules during this time?
Well, I think self-care right now is a really big deal. We don't even realize the weight of the stress, the unidentified loss, the anxiety we might be carrying too. And I've noticed I'm just more fatigued, and that makes me a little more hurried to get things done. And I think making sure that we as parents, as best we can, get enough rest, get enough reflection time. If we are verbal processors like I am, talking through some things we're worried about and having a thoughtful partner or friend or our therapist online, reminding us to stay present in today. There's so much we don't know, and just really managing our own stress well. If you do a morning quiet time, or if you are a journaler, keep up those really healthy habits. And if you're used to exercising, I might need to walk my dog with my kids. But what a sweet treat. I noticed 2 doors down, the daughter and mom have been walking their dog together for the last 3 days, twice a day. And I keep seeing them, and I am delighted for the time they're logging. But I think that's a really healthy habit for them to be keeping up. What foods are good for me? Am I adding another glass of wine each night? Self-care. Now's the time. The more balanced and calm and present we are, then even if our kids are, kind of the pinball bouncing around, we are staying in a more central place and making sure that we're staying connected to those we love and trust too, whether it's from afar, a parent who is a little more shut in, or a partner or good friends. Now's the time to stay connected.
Absolutely. Gosh, so much good stuff in there. I think that what I've been finding is the first couple of days of all this, I was doing way too much scrolling, reading every article, like just doing that. And I did feel like I got off my regular morning schedule. And it really, like, I was feeling more anxious and worried. And then as soon as I just told myself I've got to get back onto what I was doing, because I finally got myself, like, it took me until like last year to really it took me until all my kids were out of the house to be able to get onto the schedule that I've always wanted, which is starting the day with quiet time, with journaling, with exercise before I start work. And doing that and starting that up again yesterday has been really good, because I realized how much I was getting just sucked into all the news. Somebody that I follow who I really like his work, Cal Newport. He wrote a couple books, Deep Work and also Digital Minimalism. And he put out a great blog post, and I'll link to it in our recap for this meeting. But he talked about how what we should probably do is have one trusted news source, or the CDC or whatever, check that just once a day. And I know that sounds crazy, but honestly, the constant looking and the constant following is not good for us. And it also kind of takes away from the other things that we can be doing that are more productive during this time. So staying informed without being just flooded all the time with information and just so focused on it all the time. So I liked that advice, just to kind of look at the news, see what's going on, be informed without just too much of it. I'm a huge fan now of something called the Miracle Morning, which I learned about in an interview with Debbie Reber, she's Tilt Parenting. So she especially works with families of kids who are they're neurologically atypical. So some of the kids you mentioned, gifted kids, ADD, on the spectrum, all that. And so that's even, having those kids off their regular structure is really hard. They need more predictability, or they, also anxious kids, like you mentioned. Some of us need more structure than others. And I think as parents, we can kind of figure that out. But for ourselves, this is an opportunity for a reset, I think, of if there are routines or something that you've been wanting to establish in the morning, but you haven't had time because you're rushing out the door. It's something that you can start now, and start really small. Like, for example, if you're saying that you wanted to do more just kind of mindfulness or some deep breathing, try to do 1 minute. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to say we're going to be like 1 hour of deep breathing. I mean, some of us just, it's just like, whatever, just start small. Same with exercise, a 10-minute walk. Like, this does not mean we have to, up everything. But even if the Miracle Morning, what it tells you to do is like put all these things in there, and exercise is one of them. But it's not a dictation of like how much. It's just to get your body moving, get your heart rate up a little bit. So it could be walking the dog. But if you have this routine, and Debbie does it with her son, and I really liked that they read the book together. they did this together. And so they're both talking about how does this make us feel? It's good for our well-being. So I like that concept too. If there's something that you're going to do as sort of a reset during this time, whether it's some kind of, eating more healthily or exercising more or reading or journaling, invite your kids to participate if they're interested, and you could do it together. I mean, that's one idea that I think could be helpful during this time.
I think wonderful. And again, starting the day off or closing the day off seem to be really important times to be in that mindset of centering, catching your breath, reflecting. Hopefully both of those contribute to a more peaceful, calm day, but also more peaceful, calm sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I think something that maybe is a little less overwhelming than thinking about this whole schedule is maybe just like you were saying, like when you talked about your neighbor, what if all parents did was let's take one walk a day with the dog?
That's doable.
That's good. That's something. You can start with somewhere with some kind of something.
You had talked, Audrey, earlier before we started recording about checklists. And I love that it's a schedule based on a couple important things to accomplish rather than on a rigid time frame. You want to talk about the checklists?
Yes. And I see actually Gretchen, my daughter, who's the high school teacher who created the checklist. She's here today. So shout out to Gretchen for this one.
Hi, Gretchen.
She sent she provided this for her students. And I do agree, like all of us as adults or just autonomous, independent people, which many of us and our children are, would rather know, here's all the things we need to get done and figure out how to get them done than you have to do this right now. I mean, it just feels better to say, hey, you know what? During this time when we're all home, we all need to, do this one household chore. We all need to get our work or schoolwork done, and let's get a little exercise too. You figure out what works for you. Here's what I'm doing. You're welcome to join me. Or something like that. So her checklist, and I don't have a copy of it here, but I shared it on my website, and I will share it out on the PDF in case people didn't get it. Oh no, I do have it here. What I really like about it, and I'll just hold it up so people can see, it has, it's not like, really, when you think about life, our work is just one small part of it. And sometimes we think it's so much more than it is. It's a big part, but there's so much more to life than just our work, whether it's schoolwork or our careers or jobs. And so she also has on here some type of mindfulness. So there's so much available on YouTube, like meditation, yoga things, or just taking some deep breaths. My Fitbit has a thing where it can like breathe along with you. She has physical activity, 30 minutes or more. She said a walk or a run outside or some kind of app to do a little class, whatever. Reading. She had reading a book of your choice for at least 30 minutes. I love that. This extra time we have now could get us all reading more, which is such a terrific thing to be doing. And then connection. She just, says FaceTime or video chat with a friend for at least 30 minutes. I mean, what a great, recommendation. Talk to or do an activity with a family member. So the people you are home with, play a game of cards, do something, even watch a TV show together. Call a relative. I know that for us, we've been prioritizing FaceTiming with grandparents, so that we can connect with them. And then the fun, which is like really important. And that's kind of the bottom thing. And let's talk more about fun, because honestly, I think we could all use some more fun right now, Sarah. So
oh my goodness.
What are your
laughter is healing.
Yes. So what are some of your fun, like family things or suggestions for people, Sarah?
Well, I think just a little caveat on what you're talking about, how kids chiming in or getting some ownership about their structure or their schedule. I actually think we can even do that with the littles by saying, hey, today, help us decide, what time of day do you want to do this? Now, we always ask our questions well, so here are your two choices. We can bounce on the trampoline or we could go for a walk. Which one do you want to do? And what time of day do you want to do it? We can still give them a sense of control and ownership while, making sure that little piece happens throughout the day. But gosh, the fun piece, it is going to need to change up from the big group organized fun to what can be sweet fun, what can be new fun, what can we find humor in, maybe that we haven't been realizing we've been missing. I especially like during these times when we start something that continues over days. So an ongoing Uno game with the whole family where you're keeping score for 2 weeks. On your walk, the first person to see and take a picture of a wild creature or a new flower or a funny cloud that looks like XYZ, and then sending that to grandma. So it's a photo of the day. Sometimes those ongoing things give kids something to look for. And frankly, the bit of competition is really important for some of us that need a little, there's no sports to watch. We can watch reruns of that amazing championship game. But how do I meet my own need for a little competition? And I think ongoing games are a blast. Even in our office, we play Quirkle at lunchtime. I confess I don't dive in as much as I ought to, but just that ongoing game and having kids participate and work on good teamwork within that, I think is a blast. And if they're young enough, they can still put on a show. They can build a fort. If we, if we need to stay indoors right now, where we live, it's wonderful. We get to go out, but there are some places that are already having some shelter in place recommendations. But building forts, oh my gosh, giving the dog a bath and making a huge mess, having that dance party that just breaks out. You can even have a dance party virtually with all your friends. So those are some things that can be kind of reintroduced into a family that's been too busy. The organization Challenge Success out of Stanford, which is an amazing youth development organization. We'll put a link on the notes, but they really are challenging parents and teachers, school districts even, to look at defining success in a different way, not just by the A's and by the high SAT scores and the college you get into, but by personal development and joy and thriving. And they really recommend what's called PDF every day, and that's playtime, downtime, and family time. And each of those moments in the day, we have time to make that happen now with not a whole lot of excuses except for maybe exhaustion. But wow, to plan in some delightful child initiated play. The downtime is that quiet, restful time. And then the family time of ongoing family games or making dinner together. I talked to a parent the other day who said, now that my college student is at home, I will be assigning him to make dinner once a week. I think that's brilliant. And to make it more fun, we brainstormed, she gets to choose the ingredients and the meal must be made out of that. That also helps us gauge, for those of us who are having challenges finding things at stores, here's your ingredients, you go for it. Dinner's in an hour. I think that's a blast and really fun.
You could gamify that too. You could have your 2 kids and give them their box of ingredients like that show. And then the parents can be the judges.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun.
Sounds like, and then they can, yeah, that could be really fun. I love all that. I also think when you say playtime, remember that adults need playtime too. I think this is really an important concept, and maybe our playtime doesn't look the same as our kids. But again, it's really important that we do things that fill us up. So it could be playing a musical instrument that we like, or it could just be reading or talking to our friends, or like I've been thinking about all these random things that I have to do. Like I have old, like candles that have a little bit of wax left in them. I guess you can like melt out, you can put them in boiling water and then refill them. There's like some like little craft projects and things that here's a time to kind of look at what do we have here that we could utilize, kind of whatever. So I'm kind of thinking of this. I did have my son yesterday. I asked him what dinners he wants to learn to cook, kind of adding to his adulthood preparedness. I have say on my ready for adulthood checklist, like be able to cook like 8 to 10 dinners. And so, most kids can do pasta and whatever, but what a great time to teach them how to use the barbecue. Yesterday, he learned to do this roast where you sear it and then you slow cook it in the oven. And it was one of his favorite meals. So it's very easy. It has a few ingredients. And so he did that yesterday and I kind of supervised, but now he knows how to make that. So if we do that again. So I love the cooking thing. And I think for parents who work, which is a lot of us, that also gives us that time to do some work once we get them kind of trained on these things. So while obviously young kids will need supervision for like using ovens and whatnot, some young kids can, they can wash the lettuce for the salad without you. They could learn how to do that and do that without you standing right by. So I don't think that we should expect that playtime means we're always playing with our kids. We want them to get some independent playtime. The other thing I wanted to point out is like for people with young kids is when you're struggling with like defiance about maybe some of the things that you want them to do, like chores, I would really go back to that kind of that love and logic language that we all know, which is, oh yes, you can watch that YouTube show as soon as you've gotten the table all set for dinner. So that we can use this privilege of watching TV, which probably people will be on their screens more right now. And honestly, I think that's okay if it gives us the break we need to do some of our work. However, I do think making, you can make it kind of a privilege contingent upon maybe whatever it is that's important to you, making their bed or getting their laundry done or getting dinner started. You can just say these chores, we all need to do these things. And our reward or privilege then is this like free time of being on our screens and that type of thing. What do you think about that, Sarah?
Oh, I think that's great. It also reminds kids that they are part of the family community. And sometimes in our very busy and hectic lives, kids can forget that they have a contribution to make, even at 6 years old, 10 years old, 17 years old, 20 years old. They help this family system run well. And by, blending in those chores, setting the table before getting to do this, they see that, work before play is something that adults need to do. And there's an important part, without even saying anything, that can, important part of growth that can come out of that. I think that's great. Also, our kids may be watching us in new ways because we're also home together. And the way we approach play and exercise and meals and our work, we may be modeling for them in a new way because they're around to see it. And this might be a good accountability for us to make sure that we're looking for that balance, that we're also making those good choices. And again, you don't need to say anything. It's just what they're seeing in us modeling, healthy choices, wise choices.
Wow, that's a high bar. Like they're going to see our dysfunction, like when
They
we
sure
forget to eat, when they forget to eat lunch till 2 p.m. and just drinking too much coffee or whatever.
Welcome to my world. Yeah. It's true. But then they can hopefully also see us laugh hard and say, oh, tomorrow I'm going to do it differently.
Right. Okay. So let's just talk about a few of the essential things that, that do need to be in place. And I'm just, one of the things that you and I have talked to a lot is I think some of us have had some frustration with some of the words our kids say about things because they sound kind of selfish when they talk about, some of the events, some of the things that they're missing out on because of not being able, everything being canceled. So what are some of your thoughts on how we can respond to our kids when they're talking about these basically losses, this grieving that they're going through of these things?
Well, you said it. I think it's important for us as parents to remember that our kids, as well as ourselves, are going through a lot of loss right now. It's not just change, but it's missing out and losing. And some of the losses are very small. Like I don't get to see my best buddy, Claire, for a couple weeks now because for whatever, reason, we're not going to be in school and we live too far apart and things like that. And so that just might be a loss of the one who knows me the best. It may be a loss of my very first T-ball season. was really important, to Glenn, and now he doesn't have it perhaps. But some of the losses are big. Washington, D.C. trips being canceled for eighth graders. A lot of them were looking forward to that. Their older siblings went. The loss of graduation for college students and high school students. I've heard a number already share that, God, that's a big loss. For some, the loss of their wedding ceremony because they can't have that many people gather anymore. Some of the losses are big. We practiced for 9 weeks for the play and never got to put it on. These are big things, and I think we need to honor those losses for our kids. Some of them have never lost like this before, and for if you think about how you feel when there is loss and grief, some of them, our kids, and some of us will get very tired in the days ahead, just really kind of exhausted. And you're like, you haven't done very much. Why are you tired? Well, loss is tiring. Loss can create foggy brain. Being forgetful, being disoriented, that's very common with grief. Being cranky and being surly in a bad mood, that is a very common response to loss for young teens and adolescents. And we might want to react really sharply or say, you're being ungrateful, look what I'm losing too. But we need to remember that this is a new experience or a deep experience for them. And I think holding their losses with compassion and maybe even approaching that surly 14-year-old and saying, you seem, especially agitated or irritated at me today. Where do you think that's coming from? Really getting curious about the behavior. You seem really tired. Where do you think that might be coming from? And simply listening. Man, as parents, don't we just want to dive in and fix it and tell them what they feel and what they do? But what if we could listen? That sounds really hard. Tell me more about that. Has there been another time you felt like that before? How long, what are some things you can do to maybe, make yourself feel better around that, or to be able to hold that? Or when we all get to be back together again, what could we do instead? I think honoring the loss and helping kids feel hopeful that's not always going to be this way, and that they are accepted and normal for how they feel. I think that is a really essential part of the kinds of days we're building for them. And, for some kids, it's going to be really small. Maybe it's drawing a picture in a journal about what makes them sad today, as well as drawing a picture of what they found fun today. Could be something that simple. With my 22-year-old, he can articulate his deep loss and discouragement, and with some really important words. And we just sat quietly on FaceTime with that. What's your input about that, Audrey, holding loss with our kids?
Well, I'm just feeling teary listening to you because I feel like it's not just our kids, it's all of us.
Yes.
There's just like a lot of things, but for my son, I just especially like seniors in high school, like kids in these momentous times. I know one of our campers last week, it was her bat mitzvah, and you work years and years. And so it was just the officiants and her family. She was able to do it. And I guess they live streamed it, which was nice, but there's a lot of things that our kids like plays and things that, like you said, and then we all have things too, work things, maybe projects or conferences or whatever it might be that have also kind of, been a loss for us. So what I really think is just keeping up. If you don't already have some kind of daily sharing thing, this is a great time to start it, just to get the conversation going. And even if the kids don't catch on and participate fully, even if it just gives you the opportunity to share, for example, your high of the day or something that went well or something that was fun, and your low or what you're worried or anxious about. Even if we just start and we show our kids, okay, here's what I'm doing right now. I'm like, today this is what went well and I enjoyed, and this is what I'm kind of like is bothering me or, making me a little worried. I think this is a time that at a very bare minimum, we should have some kind of time where we gather as a family. Ideally, like dinner is a really easy time. Now we can all be there for dinner. Maybe you have it earlier if your kids are younger, but just getting into just the regular practice that at least once a day we do some sharing around these things, because I think that's when we'll have the opportunity to just provide that listening and empathy, and also build our kids' compassion, because they're going to be able to see, oh, like my sibling or my parent, they're also having things going on right now. So I do think that connection with the people you are with is really important. And then I also think, like, I know, Sarah, your virtual connection with your friends where you share the 3 good things, we can encourage our kids who are older to do that too. A lot of them have already just naturally done that. I don't really understand it all, but like one of my sons, my 16-year-old, they have some kind of new server set up where they can basically like all be there and be connected all the time, which, that's great. These kids, this is an opportunity. They're going to learn some new even more technology, but they're going to use it to connect. So I think for us as well, let's make sure that every day with the people we're with, the people we're in our homes with, we do some kind of sharing, and then maybe also with some people outside via virtual techniques. I think that connection, we could start a habit now that will be really meaningful even beyond this crisis time.
I agree. And building in that gratitude piece. The gym shut down, but wow, we have that set of weights. We're really fortunate that we already had some weights. What could we do with that? Or it's beautiful outside. We get to go on walks, and building in kind of those gratitudes for the simple things again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is hopeful. It gives hope.
Totally. Okay. So what I'd really like to ask is for anyone participating either here in Zoom or on Facebook, there are so many resources. It's almost like too many things available for us to do. We can do virtual tours of museums. We can do a doodle class every day. And there's all these things, which are there's so many good things, right? It's sort of like everything else now. There's just a lot available online. I'd really love to kind of crowdsource what resources you're finding really helpful. I think most of us probably would be great if we kind of find one for ourselves and maybe one for our family. So like if the one thing for ourselves is the Calm app and doing something, or a podcast we enjoy listening to on our walk. And then like something that maybe as a family we can do a tours of different museums, or, whatever it might be, or a TV show that we're all going to watch together. I mean, I'm thinking that that's a realistic kind of nice bar that doesn't seem like we'll fail at if we pick one thing for ourselves, one thing as a family that we're going to kind of do either for fun or well-being together. But I'd love to hear everybody's ideas of what things you're finding that are really fun and helpful, and also maybe put how old your kids are so we can kind of classify them. I know it's very different for people with young kids. There might be different things than for older kids. I know that, like I heard from one of our directors who has a 4 and 7-year-old that Disney released Frozen 2 early. So it's available to watch now, things like that. So if you could share, everyone who's here, and I don't know if you can all share so that panelists and attendees, or if you can only share with panelists, but I'd love for everyone participating to put your input in so that we can share it out to everyone else. And then I think, is there anything else that we want to cover before? Oh, I wanted to make sure there's actually 2 things. One is, I know we've mentioned it several times. It's critical that we all get outside. Even if we're in like cold climates, just get outside and breathe in a few like breaths of fresh air. Really important for our well-being. I found today, we have a treadmill and I usually use that. Today I went outside. It was a little chilly, so much better to get outside. Take the dog out there. It was crisp and cold, but so good. So get outside if you can, whether it's in your backyard, walking down the street, whatever you're allowed to do. If you're near a place where you can go for hikes, go for it. It really will be a great way to feel better. And then the other thing is reading. I know that many of us feel like we haven't had time to read in recent years. I've always loved reading, and I'm finding that reading is a really good break from just like scrolling and looking at news and everything. So thank you so much for all the sharing that you're starting to do in the chat, everybody. We really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to send this to everybody who registered. And so everyone who's in that group who registered. So if you haven't like officially registered, go back to the link for this webinar and register, and then you'll get the thing that I send out with everything. All right. So now we're going to just turn it to open it up to some questions. So attendees, if you have any questions for Sara or for me or for both of us, or comments or anything, we'll just spend these last few minutes just kind of seeing what you all have to share here.
As you're looking at those, Audrey, I thought I would just add in one more thing. As we are having to homeschool, as days are going to roll into one another, I think one thing we may consider doing as parents is keeping a weekend. And so structure, for example, may look really different on a Saturday and Sunday. We do sleep in. We do maybe eat a little more junk food, where during the week we're eating healthful and keeping our immune system up, and we're maybe eating more regularly. Like, it's good to have a Saturday. Sundays, last Sunday, and I'll be doing this moving forward, I had the whole family gather and we live streamed the service from our church. And many churches are doing that now. And so we all got together and we all had a cup of coffee, or orange juice, and went to church together. But Saturday, keeping the weekend a weekend will help us enjoy those 2 days in new ways. And then, and also making sure, our kids and we are sleep deprived. It's been a big issue with anxiety, depression, stress. Sleep deprivation is a big issue in the United States. This is a time that we can refill our sleep tanks. And so helping even older kids shut down their screens early enough. So it's not about sleeping until noon necessarily, but going to bed at a reasonable time. I think that we can come out healthier after this season of lockdown.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me, because that was one of the key points. I actually had the printout of the picture from Christine Carter's The New Adolescence. I went to her talk, and basically she said sleep deprivation is a core reason teenagers today often feel lonely, anxious, and overwhelmed. And I would say also adults. Everything is better when we've gotten some sleep, gotten some exercise, had enough water. So it's like the basic. Yes. I feel like there's that quote I saw, like, we're basically like house plants. We need a little sun and water to thrive. But so much of the basics have been getting neglected. So I like this. I mean, I think this opportunity, it's not a good situation, but it's an opportunity for a reset and an opportunity for us as individuals, whether we're parents or not, or in families, to kind of reset, reconnect. Some people have been running so crazy and so busy that some of the playtime or the downtime or the sleep time has been lost. So yes, you're so right. Thank you so much for joining Sara and me for creating structure, fun, and connection. This week, I want to especially encourage you to visit the show notes for this week's episode, which you can usually find by swiping up in your podcast player or by visiting my website. We have a ton of resources to share, both from our own resource libraries as well as many ideas that participants in our webinar shared with us. So I encourage you to access the show notes by swiping up on your podcast player into the show notes or by visiting my website. I have so many amazing resources and connections through the camp industry as well as through my podcast. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be sharing additional interviews and resources. Probably the best place to find out about all of those is through my website at sunshine-parenting.com. And if you want to be sure not to miss anything, be sure to subscribe to my emails or follow my Facebook page at Sunshine Parenting. And that way you won't miss these resources and ideas coming from youth development professionals. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. Kids thrive with structure for the same reason most adults do. When we know what to expect, we feel less stressed and more relaxed. The unknown causes stress, and there are many unknown things in life for which we cannot prepare. While the process of setting up structure, rules, and routines in your family might stress you out if you are a parent with a more free-flowing personality, know that you are taking an important step for your children's well-being by bringing calm and predictability to your family's daily life. If our kids can depend on some predictability and structure in that very important place called home, we provide them a safe, calm buffer against a chaotic world. I'm Audrey Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again next week for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.